Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Widow Podcast. This week I have a very special guest for you, the lovely Jess. You probably know her as the Singing Widow from Instagram, who does some amazing reels, absolutely incredible. I don't know where you get your ideas from. You're clearly very creative, Jess. I love it. But Jess has come along to talk to us today to share a little bit about her story and talk about finding love and being a remarried widow. She gets a lot of questions asked about this. So welcome, Jess. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, bless you. So should we start with your story? And tell us a little bit about, your loss, your husband, Justin, and how you sort of came into the world of widowhood.
Yeah, so me and Justin were married for 10 years. We were high school sweethearts. Actually, I was like in middle school when I started seeing Justin. And we just knew we were going to get married and have this wonderful life together. And we did. He was an amazing guitar player. And my mom was a choir teacher. So I grew up singing. And we just kind of like went together, because we were musicians and started playing music together. And so that was kind of our life for 10 years. We got married. I actually graduated high school, engaged. We got married a year after I graduated. We were married for 10 years, played music together, wrote music together. We wanted to be rock stars. And then about 10 years later, I decided I was ready to have kids. So we got to it and got pregnant right away and bought a house and had a beautiful baby boy. And everything was great. And then we came home to our new house that we had purchased. And we were just like enjoying family and friends. And we heard a noise. And well, he didn't hear the noise, but those of us who were there heard this loud noise. And he was killed instantly when a straight bullet came through our back window and hit him basically the second he stood up. It's like a 1 in infinity, I think the cops said, for it to hit him. Basically, you couldn't even make that shot if you were trying to. It was a convicted felon who was living in a house that was over 200 yards behind us. And he was a drug addict. We lived in a really nice neighborhood. So it wasn't like we lived in some, bad neighborhood with bad people. He was just the only one that happened to be there and said he was playing with his guns that day. And the bullet managed to find Justin at the very moment that he stood up, and he was killed instantly. So that was how I became a widow. It was 3 days after my son was born. And, as you can imagine, I was devastated. Devastated doesn't come close to describing how those moments after he died were. And that for a couple of years, I would say, just life was really, really hard.
Well, I mean, how old was Justin?
He was 33.
33, so young, and Jack's, your son, was just 3 days old.
Yeah.
Wow. And the trauma from being there and observing that, that's huge, isn't it? And then there's obviously the loss of your husband, which is huge, and then there is being a mum, a new mum. I mean, that is a crazy time in our lives as well, isn't it? So all those three things together, you must have, just like you say, there's probably no words to describe what was going on for you.
No, I mean, it was just layers upon layers of grief and darkness. And yeah, the trauma is a kind of a separate thing. Because I think we all go through somewhat of a trauma when we lose a spouse. I do believe that. But I think that kind of trauma where, life is just suddenly changed in an instant. And for me in particular, life was as great as it could be. Here you are, you just had a child. And for it to make that sudden change when you've let your guard down nonetheless, because when you're in the hospital, you have a baby, you're still kind of like on high alert and all that. But we were home, we were ready to just enjoy life. And yeah, it's been a major journey to get to where I'm at today.
So how did you navigate those first few sort of weeks, months? Did were you sort of picked up by the people around you and supported in that way?
Yes. I have such an amazing support system. I'm very close with my parents. I moved in with them. So we picked up my stuff and went straight to my parents' house. I think when the paramedics came, because they were called, even though he was gone already, they gave me some type of a sedative. I was very, very out of control physically, and they were worried I was going to hurt myself. And I had just had a child 3 days prior. So um, I was just kind of like a zombie, I would say, for the rest of that day, um, thanks to some type of medication. And then after that, it was just this blur of people coming in and out of the house, of my parents' house, because that's where we went. And I mean, I remember we pulled up to my parents' house, which was like 2 miles away from my house. It looked like there was like football parties, is what I say, because it was like cars and cars and cars just like piled everywhere down the
Mm.
street. And so it was like all these people, and it was like, what are these people doing here?
Mm.
So I mean, they didn't go away, for days and days, just crowds of people that, either grew up with us or knew my family or whatever. So it was just kind of a blur of that. And they were the last people I wanted to see, but obviously it was probably good because I just had all these people kind of coming, to my assistance.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Just so much for you to process and work through. Absolutely. So what do you think was the biggest support for you in those early days and months? I know you moved back to your parents, but what gave you the strength, I suppose, to keep going? Because obviously you've got a newborn as well to look after. Was there something within you that drove you forward, or was it something externally?
Oh, absolutely. It was 100% being a mom.
Mm.
Um, I I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have my son. There was a moment where I wanted to breastfeed. I was really, really passionate before having my son that, oh, I've got to breastfeed. This breast is best. Nothing against formula or anything, for other
Yeah.
people. But for me personally, that was just really important to me. And there was, it was really hard. Jax was not an easy baby. He cried a lot, but I said, this is what I'm going to do. I am here. I am the only one who can provide this food for my child. So I tell people that nursing, is what got me through the first month of
Yeah.
widowhood. And that was
Yeah.
what I really devoted all my efforts to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you've got to have something, haven't you, that kind of keeps you going, something to hold on to keep you
Absolutely.
taking those steps forward, because it is just so very hard. So how long after this happened, Justin died, did you decide to start dating again?
I started dating it was probably about 15, 16 months later. So like a little over a year and a half, or right at a year and a half. And it was just this curiosity I had. I
Hmm.
kind of had it, all throughout that first year. I was just so young, and Justin was my one and only. And I thought, well, I was really good at being married, and I was really happy, and I really enjoyed it, and I really also wanted a father figure for my child. That was a major part of me wanting to find love again. So I just had all those thoughts, and I thought, this might be fun. Like, hey, this is my life. I might as well have fun. Like, so, some of it was fun and some of it was not. But I think curiosity was just the first step.
So like how long before you actually decided to go and actively date? How long before that did you start to have those thoughts of, I was good at it. I liked it. I'd like a father figure. I'd like to meet someone else. How long before it did that happen?
It was less than a year. I
Mm,
mean, it was really less than a year. I don't remember exactly, but I know I hadn't seen my 1 year anniversary yet. And, I was attracted to other people,
yeah.
and I felt bad and wrong for feeling that way. I
Mm,
didn't understand it. And one thing that I think widows can understand, but I think if you're not a widow, you really don't get the fact that, well, not even just a widow, but when you've gone through such a profound loss, that time just slows down.
mm,
So it had been 6 months, and to me, it felt like it had been 2 years.
mm.
So all this time in my brain had passed, even though physically it hadn't. So I
Yes.
think that's kind of how it was for me.
It's really strange, isn't it? The time thing, the effect it has. And like you say, like I've really noticed that sometimes and especially in those early raw days of grief, 5 minutes felt like a day, didn't it? And a day feels like a week, and you're just sort of trudging through treacle thinking, oh my god, this is so slow. But then there's other times when you're taken right back, aren't you? And it feels like it all happened yesterday. And it has a really bizarre effect on time, I think, and how we feel in time and what it does for us. But I certainly hear you on the slowing down of it. I mean, that was huge and actually painful. It was felt like it's just prolonging all the pain all the time, and it was so hard.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. I came up with one silver lining, and that was that I got to have a baby for longer, you
Oh,
know?
bless you.
So it was
Yes.
like, oh, he's only a week old? Like, oh my gosh, I feel like he's been here for 2 months, you know?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well done. Yeah, you got to somewhere in that all of that, try and find some good, haven't you?
Yes.
100%. So how was that first date that you went on?
It was not good.
No.
No, it was someone I met on like an app. He was this majorly country guy. He drove 3 hours to take me on a date.
Wow.
Because, yeah, I would not date anyone in my area because I was so embarrassed.
Oh.
And so I was like, if somebody wants to date me, they're gonna have to drive to where I'm at. So we met at a Dave and Buster's. I don't know if you know what a Dave and Buster's is.
No.
It's a restaurant where you play video games and you
Okay.
eat food and you drink. Like, it's for kids and adults, whatever. And so it was fine. I had a lot of confidence. I don't know where that confidence came from, but I was feeling really confident. I had just lost a lot of baby weight. And it was like we hadn't been there 5 minutes, and he I don't know how it came up that I was a widow, but it did. And then he just wanted to start asking me questions. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, this is the last thing I want to talk about on a date. Yeah, he wasn't my type.
Yeah.
I ghosted
Yeah.
him the next day. I felt so bad, but I got it out of my system, so it was good. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, did you tell anyone? Because you said you felt bad about being seen out locally. Did people know you were going on a date?
just my parents. I was
Okay.
living with my parents, so they were the only people who knew. My mom was all with, part of me setting up my profile and my dating profile. She was all into it.
That's
It's kind of,
lovely.
yeah, we were like best friends. So yeah, but that was it.
So,
I didn't tell anybody, not even my friends.
oh, bless. So how did you work through that shame and that guilt?
I just slowly but surely did. I think the more I did it, the more I realized, like, what are you ashamed of? Like, you haven't
Mm.
done anything wrong. Justin's not coming back. You were 100% devoted to him while he was here, never even looked at another man when he was
Mm,
here.
mm.
And it was something I just kind of had to come to terms with myself. But I did go to therapy, and I did work through the therapy with these feelings and thoughts. And I do think that helped a lot as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's tough. It's really tough, isn't it? Because, we judge ourselves. We feel like other people are judging us and we're betraying our
Hmm.
person, don't we?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. There's that kind of, we have to do the thing to become comfortable with it. And you can overthink it and overanalyze it and talk yourself out of it. But actually by doing it and being in it, it becomes more normal. It feels more natural, doesn't it? And we kind of make our peace with it slowly but surely.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way of looking at it for sure.
So how long sort of into your dating days was it that you met your husband? You're now remarried, aren't you, to Don? How long did it take you to meet him?
If I did the math, I could figure it out, but I think it was right about like 5 or 6 months into
Okay.
dating.
Yeah. And was
And
that on?
I was really like almost at the 2-year mark when I started seeing Dawn.
Yes. Yeah. And how did you meet him?
So I've known Dawn for a long time. I've known him when we started dating. I probably had known him for 8 years, but we weren't like friends. We were like acquaintances.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to work together at this restaurant back in the day called Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville. And he was a bartender, and I used to wait tables. And then I also used to sing there with Justin. And so he was just some guy I thought was really nice. And I remember thinking, like, he had this girlfriend who broke up with him. And I remember thinking, what a horrible person. Like, why would she break up with Don? He's like the nicest person ever. I just thought he was a great guy. And I always thought, like, I hope he finds somebody to make him happy. And that was really the extent of our relationship. We were Facebook friends. And I bumped into him one day at a restaurant when I was out with my friends. And this thought came over me where I was like, Don's really cute, and I thought, I wonder if he's single. And I asked my friend, who was like a mutual friend, and he was actually taken at the time. But not long after that, his girlfriend like cheated on him and broke his heart. And he had just bought them a house. It was like this big mess for him. And so she texted me when I was on tour with my band, and she's like, guess who's single? And it was Dawn. And so she set us up, kind of, we went on this group date. And yeah, the two of us, like, we were super attracted to each other. And then he asked me out like that next day. He asked me out, and we started seeing each other. Yeah.
So lovely. And I think it's so nice, isn't it? Because for me, dating was always quite hard. When you meet someone that you don't know and you've got no links to, and nobody knows them, it feels a little bit kind of disjointed, doesn't it? Because you never quite know. And it's a bit scary. But when you meet someone that you either have known or you know people that know them, it's just a little bit more reassuring, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think for me too, and anyone who's any widow, that has to date, like, you don't want to have to go through that whole process of sharing your story and doing all that, like, not when you're in that situation. So it was just so nice for me. I knew he knew my story.
Yeah.
I mean, I just assumed he knew my story because anyone who lived within, 200 yards of where I lived knew my story.
Yeah.
So it just took all that pressure
Yeah.
away,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, your son was probably about 2 then, I take it.
Yeah, he wasn't
Yeah.
2 yet when we started dating, and Don was at his second birthday party. So,
Oh, wow. So you introduced them quite quickly.
it was probably about 2 months. I think we had been seeing each other, and then I let him.
Yeah.
Well, he came over one night, and Jax woke up in the middle of the night, and Don was sleeping over, and
Oh, and
He
that's
just
how they
had to
met.
he had to be introduced to the child by me bringing Jackson to the bed with me.
Oh, how did that go? Is that weird?
I remember thinking, this is either going to be a moment where he's going to leave
Yeah.
or he's going to stay, and this could be like a huge moment in our relationship because we hadn't been seeing each other very long, but that's a big deal. And he stayed and he wrapped his arms around me, and Jax was, right here, and then Dom was behind me, and it
That's
was a
lovely.
yeah, it was definite
Yeah.
moment where I was like, okay, maybe this guy might be, someone I might could see a future with. So
That's so lovely. And how was Jax with that? Was he okay?
oh yeah, I mean, he was just he was almost 2, so he was just a baby at that point. So
Yeah.
I was very cautious about. I didn't. Don's the only one he ever met.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Jax started. I think he first called Don dad by accident when he was 3.
Oh, and does he call him dad now?
Oh yeah,
Does
absolutely.
he?
Yeah.
Oh, and I take it you're absolutely happy with that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, even early on, I remember him accidentally calling Don dad because we called him Don in front of Jax. But I just remember it made me feel really awkward, but it also kind of made me feel like really happy,
Yeah.
because I wanted that for him. I wanted him
Yeah.
to be able to call someone dad.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So how do you keep Justin alive for him?
For Jax,
Mm.
I mean, just all the typical stuff. We talk about Justin all the time. There's pictures of Justin all around the house. We always have a birthday party for Justin on his birthday. We go visit the grave at least maybe 5 to 8 times a year. It really depends. I mean, I go a little bit more than that, but just Jax goes with me that many times. Show him pictures, tell stories about him, just
Mhm.
everything we can do.
And how do you think he is? Because he was obviously so young.
Mhm.
How is he now? I mean, it sounds like he clearly feels very safe and secure in the family that you have now. Do you think it's impacted him?
We're starting to see Jax get impacted by it all
Mm.
now recently. He asks, well, recently he asked, is Daddy Don my stepdad or is he my dad? And that was like a big question we hadn't got from him, And so, we had to be honest with him. I was like, well, technically he's your stepdad because your birth father is Daddy Justin, but we don't think of him that way because you don't have an earthly father. Um, but he is very protective of Dawn. Father's Day was just yesterday, and he wanted to go to the grave, but we had just gone 2 days ago because 2 days ago was Justin's death anniversary. And I was like, I don't think we're gonna go today. We just went 2 days. And he was like, well, I really wanted to, which I was kind of surprised. And I was like, okay, well, maybe we'll go today. But then he, wants to turn to Dawn and say, Daddy, I don't want that to hurt your feelings.
Mm.
So he's very conscious about he's very interested in Justin, but he sure loves his daddy Don. And that's what when we're referring to them, we refer to them as Daddy Justin or Daddy Don,
Mm.
so we can distinguish between the two.
Yeah, real sort of conflict of emotions there for him, and he's worried about upsetting Don with maybe wanting to know more about Justin and involve him in your lives. Do you think there's an element, because I know you're due to have another baby, aren't you, very soon with Don? Is that a little bit unsettling for Jax, do you think?
I think that that's what's bringing up all these questions and these emotions because, you know, technically, Sloan, that's what we're naming her, will be Jax's half sister.
Mm.
Um, but we don't like to use those kind of terms, you know. She's just his sister, but I think that, you know, that's kind of what's triggered all of this for him, because he, you know, he was wondering, he was like, well, she's gonna have a different dad than me, you know, and I was like, well, you know, biologically, yes, but you know, not in the world, you know, in the world, he's still your dad. So
Mm,
definitely, you know, especially after 8 years, he's been an only child, and now
mm,
he's going to have a sister. So
mm. Yeah, big change, isn't it? Big change, and change is scary for them, isn't it? Regardless of what's gone on in their lives, it's huge.
definitely.
It's a lot for them to process. So, how do you think it has been for Don then dating a widow?
I think that it has been um a lot. He knew what he was getting into when he started dating me. And he's loved every second of it, but you know, it hasn't, you know, come without challenges that, you know, he never had to face before. Or there's just a lot of the way I describe it is there's just a lot of griefiness, you know,
Mm,
still, and a lot of a trauma. I have post traumatic stress disorder from what happened, and I've worked really hard to get to a healthy state of mind. But it still affects me, you know. So Don is just like, he's had to navigate just so much, you know, and he was never been married before, you know, no kids of his own. So he was just, you know, a bachelor for life, and got thrown into this father, you know, husband role right away, and let alone, you know, a widow.
mm,
So I'd say like you have to be a special person. Like I really do believe that. Like anyone who marries a widow or widower, or, you know, anyone who lost a partner where that person was part of their heart, you know, you have to really, really be a humble person and a special person, and not have to compare and feel insecure and all of that. And Don is just all of those things. Like he just, you know, it doesn't mean that he hasn't had his share of, you know, personal, you know, challenges or issues throughout it, because he's human, but he's really taken it all just with stride. And you know, he works, you know, to always be that person that we rely on. And you know, he wants to honor Justin too. So
mm.
that's important to him.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It does take somebody incredibly special to date a widow, to have the patience, I think, the compassion, the understanding, the ability to allow there to be a third person essentially in the relationship, not physically obviously, but that, you know, our person is there. They are with us, aren't they, all the time, and we want that, we want to take that person forward. Do you think Don ever felt like he had to fill Justin's shoes?
I do. I think that he has felt like that. You know, Don Don moved to Florida. I live in Florida, and Don moved from New York City, not New York City. He moved from upstate New York to Florida when he was in his 20s. And so he's been Floridian for 20 years. And so I've grown up here. So it's very different for him, you know, coming into another area. Um, and so he doesn't have like all these, like, you know, friends he grew up with, and, you know, this whole life that he built from the time he was young, like I do. So he is very much immersed in my life. So it's my life, and you know, that he, you know, he still has his life before me, but it's not as much of the way mine is. So you know, that was a lot. You know, he just, you know, he feels very you know, honored to be a part of it all. And you know, he feels, you know, all of my friends now are friends with him that was Justin's friends.
Yeah.
and they just adore him. And, he feels this profound responsibility to, you know, live up to, this person Justin was, because Justin was this, I know we all say that about our spouse, but Justin was an incredible person. He really,
Mm.
really was. And, Dawn is so different than Justin, but he is just as much of an incredible person in his own unique way.
Mm. Mm. Did you find it difficult making space to love two people? Because you kind of, you're married, you lose your husband, you sort of navigate your way through the grief, and you think, okay, I think I might be ready to date someone else, but you don't really know what that looks like and what that feels like. And if I meet someone else, does that mean I have to stop loving my person that died? And like you're not quite sure how it fits and how it works. So for you, how did you find that kind of falling in love with someone yet still loving someone else?
Yeah, I never considered like letting go of Justin.
Hmm.
I kept my widow name, is what I call it. Um, and it was, as soon as Justin was gone, I said, I not as soon, but when I decided to start dating, I said, well, whoever I, end up with is just going to have to get over it.
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
and I wasn't going to settle for someone who didn't let me keep that in my life. It was that important to me. And I knew that I could find someone who would. Like, I just had a lot of confidence about it. And I just made a reel about this actually. Like I truly believe like you've got to have confidence in yourself, You are a very valuable person, and you were in a happy marriage before, and there's a lot to be said about that, and you can offer that same value to someone else's life, and I had to think of them, of me as the catch,
Yeah.
you know
Mm.
and that's how I started viewing myself. And once my perspective changed, because in the beginning I was like, oh, I'm just this broken, widow, and nobody's going to want me, and, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I really think it's an inner confidence that you have to find.
Do you know, I can totally and utterly relate to that, because personally for me, when I started dating, like you've just said, I kind of thought, well, who's going to want me? I'm a bit broken. I'm struggling with my grief. I miss my husband. I'm always going to miss my husband. I've got two kids, and it's tough. It's kind of had this impact on me. And who's going to want to take all that on? No, because then I thought, well, I wouldn't want to take all that on. I wouldn't want to go out and start dating a widow that had two kids and feel like I had to fit in with. So I had this quite a negative like thought on who I would end up with and who would want me. And I really, like, through my own coaching journey, and what I love teaching people now in the groups that I hold, is that you are the value. If someone is lucky enough to capture your attention, then they are incredibly lucky. Because to your point, we're good people. We loved our person. We were good wives. We kept our vows and until death do us part. And I know that's really rubbish, but I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that, because I think that's something to be proud of. And I think what we've been through has such an impact on who we become. It shapes us in a huge way, doesn't it? We've become so much more compassionate. I think we have greater self-awareness, greater understanding of ourselves, of the world. We have much more gratitude for life, and wanting to go out there and make the best of it, and do what we can to make it as meaningful as we can. And you're right, it's allowing yourself to see that, isn't it? And really accept that, so that that if somebody out there is lucky enough to capture your attention, then they're the lucky ones. And we have to see that and really feel that within, don't we? But it's not easy to do.
Oh gosh, no. It's definitely something that you have to you have to come to that realization yourself. You know,
Mm,
nobody can get you there.
mm,
Um, and that's why I tell people, like, you know, it starts inside of you first, you know. And even a lot of widows that I talk to that are, I mean, I would not go back. You know, I would not go backwards, you
mm.
know, to just that devastating first 3 or 4 years is really what I call it. But really the first 2 years is just
Mm,
right. It's just the
mm,
worst.
mm.
And I wish I could give them my perspective and just give it to them, you know, now. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, that's not the way it works. You know, they're going to have to come to it on their own. But I really do try to tell them, like, you have to, like, you have to believe you can be happy
yeah.
again. Like,
Mm,
once you believe it and once you decide, okay, like, I do want to be happy. I don't want to just be crying every day and, you know, sad every single day. Um, you know, it starts there. And that's what
mm.
I really wish more people would grab onto.
Yeah, and again, it's something I talk about a lot in my program, because I think we will we kind of what we focus our energy on, you know, that's what grows, isn't it, essentially. And if we believe that we can be happy again, we will see possibilities and we will see opportunities, because our brain wants to prove our thoughts right, doesn't it? It's always going to look for evidence to back up what we're thinking. However, if we're thinking that, you know, our lives are over, our best days are behind us, and we're never going to be happy again, we're always going to be looking for evidence to back that up, and we will find it, because you can find evidence for both. But which one's going to make you feel better? You know, and it is really shifting the way you look at things, isn't it, really? And allowing yourself to open your heart and your mind to those opportunities and those possibilities, but it has to be at the right time in your journey, doesn't it? And
Yeah, and everybody comes to it at a different
yeah.
point in their lives. I feel like I kind of fell on my, like, realization accidentally. You know, I
Mm,
had like a good day. I just had a good day with my son when he was like 18 months old. Um and it was Christmas time, and he just was loving the lights and all of this, and I was just like, oh, this is so much fun, you know. And I realized in 18 months I realized it was the first time I didn't cry. You
mm,
know, it was the first day I had
yeah.
gone from beginning to end and not cried, and then I cried, of course,
Yes.
because then I'm like, oh, I didn't cry.
Yes.
And that was
Yes.
a day where I thought, I actually had a really good day today, and I enjoyed that,
I love
you
that.
know.
Yeah.
And I just really wanted to grab onto it, and that was like a decision I made. Like, I'm really tired of being
Yeah.
sad all the time.
And know that having a good day doesn't mean that you no longer love Justin or grieve him or anything. And I think sometimes there's that fear, isn't there, that if we allow ourselves to have a good day or some fun or some joy in our lives, that means something really terrible. But it doesn't. It's the duality of it, isn't it? And the two can live side by side. But again, it's almost like you've got to experience it and feel it for yourself to know it and fully understand it. But just allowing yourself to feel that. You kind of touched on earlier about Don feeling sometimes like he has to fill Justin's shoes. How do you reassure him that's not the case? That does he sometimes have a kind of an idealized version of Justin, that yes, he was an incredible man, but he was still a human, and you know, he had his ways. Do you discuss all sort of parts of Justin to keep him real, so that Don doesn't feel like there's this like perfect person
Yeah,
he's got to live up to?
absolutely. I love to share the intimate stories of me and Justin's relationship with Dawn, particularly because Dawn was never married before.
Mm,
And so I was, and I bring a lot of experience to the table, 10 years of marriage, you know. Um, and so I love to, you know, especially, you know, in the beginning, I'll be honest, it's hard for you to not be like, "Ah, well, Justin did this or Justin did that, because, there's things that your person did that you would, that was so wonderful and great. But then, they're not perfect. Okay. Me and Justin, Justin had a temper.
Mm.
And I like to, if Dawn does something so patiently that Justin might have, gotten so mad about if he's trying to fix something or whatever. I like to tell Dawn, like, I really like the way you did that. Like, it was so peaceful. Like, thank you. Like, and he loves hearing about it. He really does. And I think that really helps, like you said, with that, God mentality, people have of this person who's passed, because we know they were not perfect, especially me. I was married to the guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoy kind of pointing out some of the things that Don, does very well, and he likes to hear about it. So
Yeah, it's important, isn't it? I think, to keep our person real, like,
yes,
not because I really believe that if we idealize our person so much and we put them on this pedestal where they are perfect, they are unreachable, we're almost then setting ourselves up for that, well, we're never going to meet anyone as good. And it's not like you're trying to, but if you've created this perfect person in your mind that didn't exist, because nobody is perfect, you're going to find it really hard, aren't you, to go on and accept somebody else for what they are, warts and all. And I think it's important to keep our person alive for everything that they were and they weren't, and the good and the bad and the ugly, because that's life, isn't it? I mean, you talked a bit there about comparing, and at the beginning thinking, oh, Justin didn't do that, or I speak to a lot of people and they say, oh, you never compare, you shouldn't do it, it's really bad. And yeah, in an ideal world we shouldn't ever judge, we shouldn't compare, we shouldn't do a lot of things, but we're human, right? And it's like, I think personally it's quite natural if you can catch yourself doing it and go, oh, maybe that's not very fair. But do you feel it's quite natural that's kind of, when you've lost one person, you're trying to build a relationship with someone else, how do you not compare? Do you not think about your person versus your new one?
I think that it's just not realistic, to say I'm going to come into this new relationship and I'm never going to compare. I mean, it's like, we're human, we compare. We compare everything, I wish we didn't. And I am someone who works hard at trying to not compare by saying, why do I need to compare? Why do I need to do this? But definitely when you have been married to someone and then I think it's probably like that with divorce too. I mean, I've never been divorced, but I would think, if you've been in a marriage and you've been divorced, there were still good things about it. I'm sure it's harder to see those good things as in when you're widowed. But it's just natural. And I think that we've got to just give ourselves grace and just say, like, I mean, I compared, so what? I compared today. Now tomorrow I'm going to try to compare less.
Yes.
And just don't beat yourself up about it. And I think where it can be toxic is if you live in that comparison, if you're just like, well, I'm going to make a pros and cons list,
Yes.
and if there's more pros, then this person's right for me. I mean, it's like, we can't do that. We have to just find the person that's right for us, outside of comparison. And when we do compare, just
Check
go with
yourself.
it. Yeah, just go with it and be like, realize like, okay, I shouldn't have done that. Now let's move on. So.
And I think it's good as well because to your point, you do find yourself comparing, and as your new person can act in a way that maybe irritates you a bit, that you'll think, oh, my other husband, late husband, wouldn't have done that. But then for me, I check myself in terms of, yeah, okay, it works that way, but it also works the other way. Like there's things that Andy, my now partner, does that Simon wouldn't have done, but it's a lot better. A bit like doing something without losing their temper and causing absolute mayhem and chaos, and me and the girls have to leave the house because we're worried.
Yeah, totally.
About flying hammers. Yeah.
Like Don is such a chivalrous guy. So he gets me flowers all the time, and he's very romantic. Justin wasn't really a romantic guy.
Yeah.
But Justin idolized me. And so Don idolizes me, but not in the way that Justin did.
Different.
So it's just different. And so I have to realize, like, well, I'm getting this really, really great quality from Don that Justin didn't really have. You know what I mean? And I really enjoy that, and I got the other really great quality from Justin. So it's almost like you get to have all the confidence of, both. Yes. And you might as well just enjoy what confidence they gave you.
I love that. How do you manage your grief in front of Don? I find that quite difficult, because for me personally, I know Andy wants to make it all better for me when I'm having a griefy day, and he can't. And then I feel a little bit guilty sometimes about sort of crying and then being upset and saying I really miss Simon in front of Andy, because it's not your normal kind of situation, is it? It's getting better. We're getting more used to it. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I'm like, I think that I will display my grief in front of Don, but I don't like to cram it down his throat, I'm like, I know it's so funny. You probably think it's funny that I say this, but I'm actually very private with my grief.
Yeah.
I'm a very public figure online with it. But when it comes to internally and my grief and the sadness and all that I carry, I don't share it like that openly. So I usually will go behind closed doors and experience it, and then I'll come out. Now, obviously, like Don, you can't hide it from somebody all the time. And I don't try to hide it. I just try to be private with it, just because that's how I feel about it. But, if I've ever had like a very public, like moment or whatever, I really love that, like, Don actually doesn't try to make it better, because he knows he can't make it better. And he tries to be there for me, but he doesn't try to smother me. So it's really nice. And in the beginning, when he went about it that way, I was kind of like, shouldn't you be like doting on me? Like, but now, I really prefer it. I actually like it because I get to kind of have that separation. And it's kind of nice, if I want him to be in this grief moment with me, then I invite him in. I just tell him, like, I need you right now. Like, I need you to talk to me about this, or I need, we have to tell ladies, like, we have to tell these guys what we need. They are not mind readers, we have to remember that.
Yeah, we really do, because it's difficult, isn't it? Very difficult. And I get it, because I think I'm the same. Obviously Andy will see me upset because it's hard to hide it, but I do like to do my grief on my own. I like to connect with Simon on my own. I like to do something that allows me to connect to him and have my moment and feel what I'm feeling without being watched, observed, just helped
it's like
in any way.
Embarrassing or something. Like, I know that's weird, but like, that's how I feel. Like, I feel like you're so on display, and it's like, I don't want you to see me this vulnerable. I just want to do it my way. I want to do my thing.
So that's the last thing I wanted to touch on with you was the parenting side of things, because obviously, Justin isn't here for Jackson. I know he was very young when his dad died. How do you feel about Don disciplining Jax? Like, I guess because he was so much younger, have you found that quite an easy transition, or have you felt quite protective over Jax, and that's not an area you're happy with Don sort of going into? How's that been for you?
So Don, from the very beginning, always waited for me to give him the green light when it came to anything with Jax. He did not even hold Jax until I looked at him one day and I was like, "You've never held Jax before?" And he's like, "No, I haven't." And I'm like, "Here." So from the beginning, he's let me take the lead. And so, we've been together seeing each other for like 6 years now, married for 3. And in the beginning, yes, I was very protective, and Don was very like kind of hands off. Now that Jax is getting older, I've even heard myself saying, "Wait till your father gets home."
Love it.
I realized like, well, I'm not a solo parent anymore, so I shouldn't have to solo parent. Don is a very respectful, guy. So he does get to be a disciplinary for Jax, and I gave him that right. I said, when we get married, you're 100% his dad. You get just as much, parental rights as me. I mean, of course, that's not true. I still have like, I'm still kind of the head.
Top dog.
Yeah, I'm the top dog. Like he knows, like when it comes to making decisions or whatever, like he looks to me. He gives me that respect because he knows that, I invited him into this. But it is important to me that we feel like equals,
Yes.
And I think the dynamic's going to be different now that we're having a child together.
Yes.
So it's going to be, life's about to change again for me.
Yeah, I know. Does that bring up grief for you?
Oh, absolutely. This whole pregnancy has been wrapped with grief. We tried for 3 years to have a baby. And so there's infertility and we had a miscarriage. So there's that grief. And then just going through the whole pregnancy and it's weird, but like the time of year is so similar. Jax was due on June 8th. This baby is due on July 8th.
Wow.
So I'm just like, like putting the nursery together, that was really triggering for me because I never got to use my nursery before. So I have like my PTSD has been, knocking me hard lately, but it's just like you got to like remind yourself like this is different, life is different, like it's not, all going to end up sad. And it's had an impact on Jax too because he's asked us, is Daddy Don going to die when baby Sloan's born? He's got that child mentality. He doesn't understand that that's not the way it works, but he just has, it's a legitimate fear, that he has. And yeah, it's really sad to see like him ask those kinds of questions. But yeah, it's definitely been tough. Definitely.
It's huge, isn't it? And I can only imagine that, when you've had your daughter and you get to day 3, that it'd be like, oh my God, this happened at this time. And it's that time frame thing again, isn't it? And it does. It's again, it's the duality of it. You're going to be very happy, but also there's going to be that background grief that may not be in the background, but yeah, hard.
Oh yeah, I mean there's always going to be that grief there. But and I do think that I'm very aware, of it all, and I'm just like going into it, I'm like, what is it going to be like? What's it going to be like to have a child and be able to come home and, oh, you're still here.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It's all been very a friend of mine said it's like you're living in cycles.
Mm,
And he said
mm,
like you're going through the same cycle you went through 8 years later, and the
mm.
fear is legit,
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, it does. It all comes back to the surface, doesn't it? What for you do you think has been your biggest learning through all of this, that maybe about life, about yourself? What do you think it's given to you, your experience?
um my experience has like taught me that obviously, life is so short. I mean, that's just a huge one. I know that's cliche, but it's true. I just appreciate every day, and I really feel like I love deeper. It's like the love I feel for my child. I am almost in tears every day telling him how much I love him.
Yeah.
And just the little moments, I don't take them for granted. And I feel like we just get so busy in life and it just passes us right by.
Mm,
And I think that's one thing I've really learned from all of this is like we really have to cherish, the time we do have together. And even though I've been through, something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, it's taught me a lot about
mm,
life, and it
mm,
has made me a better person.
mm.
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah, richer in many ways. I know exactly what you mean. What advice would you give, I guess, if you could go back from where you are now and go back and give that newly widowed Jess and those first sort of months of that raw widowhood, or even in the first couple of years, like you say, because they're really hard, aren't they? That what would you go back and say to her now that might help her, that other widows listening to this today could maybe take away from it?
I mean, I really think that, and I did hear I try to tell this to other widows, is I try to say, I know how it feels to feel utterly hopeless.
Mm,
I know that feeling. Like, I know you see me now and you think there's no way she was as sad as me. And it's like, I promise you, like, I was I was dark, really dark. Um, so I feel like I wish I could share just that perspective of like, it's not always going to be so dark. You know what I mean? Like, there will be light again. I
mm,
promise. Like, as long as you are willing to let it in, because I do believe that some people really want to turn their grief into their identity. I know some people who have.
mm,
And once that's you, there's no room for anything else, and there's no room for happiness anymore. And you really have to be willing to let in joy again. And that's what I wish that they could understand, is like, when the moment comes to you, it's going to come to you.
mm,
You're human, and you're going to have a smile again.
mm,
And when it does, just let it in.
mm.
Don't push it away, because once you push enough of them away, they might not be coming. Those happy moments might not be coming you know so
Yeah,
quickly in the future.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think it is possible, isn't it, to love, grieve, and honor your person and live a life that you can fill with joy, happiness, good times, precious moments, and a lot of love. But it is giving yourself permission, I suppose, isn't it? Opening your heart and your mind to that. So what do you do now, Jess? Like, do you support people? I know you're absolutely incredible on Instagram with your reels and everything that you offer there. But what support do you offer people beyond that?
Um, I would love to do like a coaching program. I haven't quite got there yet. it's just because it's just something I want to make sure I'm adequately prepared for. I was working with widows a lot and helping them like with their writing and stuff. So I do that, but I'm getting too busy to do that, unfortunately. So as far as like a career goes, like I really, create content, and then I do some like individual like social media coaching and stuff and that kind of thing, because that's the creative side of me. I still sing every now and then, if the gig is right or whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't do that like I used to. That was like my livelihood back in the day. And then so yeah, I would love to start a coaching program. I'm about to start working with a platform called Circles, where I'm going to be leading like a panel. And it's going to be like a grief panel, and I'll be kind of the moderator. So I'm going to start doing that on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And I'm writing a book. My book is like, I'm writing 2 books, but I call it like my self-help book because it's more of my advice book.
Yeah.
I'm 1 chapter away from being done with that. And my goal was to have it done before the baby came, and it just didn't happen. So that's going to be like my major like focus after the baby comes, to finally get that book out there, published, ready to go, because I have so many widows that contact me and I wish I could just go, here, I wrote it all for you. And it's
Yeah.
just, here's all of my top advice,
Yes. Yes.
So that's what it is. It's really kind of a memoir / advice kind of book. It's a hybrid between the two.
Love it.
So yeah, I
Watch
have a
this
lot of plans.
space. Lots coming. I love
Yes,
it.
definitely.
No, that's been brilliant. Jess, thank you so much for opening your heart and sharing your story with us. And I'm just so happy for you that you are here where you are, happily married with a new baby about to come into your lives very soon, which is very exciting. Though I know, it will bring up the grief for you as well, but you're in safe hands. You're clearly very loved and very well looked after, so I wish you all the best. I hope it goes well. Can't wait to see the pictures, which I'm sure you'll show us
Definitely.
in due course. And yeah, really look forward to your book and any coaching and all that you do in the future. You'll be brilliant, because I know you help people in so many ways. So thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.